A lot of musicians move to LA or Nashville thinking they'll get discovered and get their big break. But that's not exactly how this business works. And if you have a plan B, a fallback plan, a teaching degree to fall back on, you're probably going to use it. And on that note, today I'm talking with music producer Rocco Guarino, who built his career the hard way. A little backup plan, no safety net, just pure grit. So Rocco went from having zero connections, living in Florida, moved to LA with $900 in his pocket and a car with an engine about to blow out, and he clawed his way up to working with artists like Velvet Revolver, Scott Weiland, Slash, big names. In this interview, we break down the myths about making it in music and what actually gets you hired as a producer, as an engineer, as a musician. We also talk about why Nashville's rock scene is a lot different than what people think, and why he believes Nashville may be the future of rock. So if you're serious about a career in music, whether as a musician, a producer, a songwriter, this conversation may challenge what you think and what you know. So I encourage you to stick around for Rocco's interview and how his perspective may change yours. And before we start, if you're into no BS, straight ahead conversations like this that answer the questions that you've always had about the music industry, simply hit that subscribe button. All right, let's get into my interview with Rocco Guarino. Where'd you grow up?
Upstate New York.
Graduating high school, did you go to college for music? You go right into the field?
Yeah, after high school, just continued with being in bands, rock bands. Then I started getting interested in all this, and I was just really interested in the record making process. Eventually, my mom went to Full Sail when my parents got divorced. She would send me all her textbooks after the semester was over. So I would get all the textbooks and I was reading it, and I had a little 4-track. So I would basically learn on that. I recorded my band, on this 4-track, and we made a demo, and it was awesome that we were able to do it ourselves, and we were really excited. So then I did other demos for other bands.
So were you charging people, or were you doing this as a hobby?
No. I was just learning. I was
Okay.
just fucking up and figuring it out, and also just running live sound for local bands and stuff. And then I met a guy who hired me, gave me $50 to record his band and a hat. Well, that was what was promised, but I never got the fucking hat. I got the $50 though. And then I moved to LA and just met Scott Weiland and started working at his studio. And
All right, so let's back up the truck there. It's like most people, I think a lot of musicians think, all right, I'm going to go out to LA, meet someone famous, and start working.
right.
Was that how it worked for you? Like, how did you make that happen?
Well, I made a record in St. Pete, Florida in 1998, and my drummer worked at Sam Ash. They transferred him from Sam Ash in wherever it was to LA, basically. And so we kept in touch for 4 years, and then I left Florida in 2001 and ended up in LA, and didn't know a single person, not one single person in LA other than this guy this my old drummer, And he had introduced me to a guy that also worked at Sam Ash with him, who ran the drum department. And that guy was a drummer for a project that Scott Weiland's partner was producing. Scott's partner in the studio that he had, the recording studio. Scott didn't engineer or produce anything, but he had a really amazing studio in Burbank, and I ended up partnering with him in that years later. So anyway, so my car broke down once. I was doing sound for the LA County Fair on the side stage, a little mariachi band on a Mackie mixer, and then I was on my way home in my Saturn, and the motor blew. And I called the one person I knew in LA, which was this drummer guy that I met once, and asked him if he would drive out to Pomona, which is like, over an hour to come get me. And the tow truck was towing my car back. And on the way back, he said, I'm playing drums for this project that Scott Weiland's partner is producing. Do you want to stop by and meet him, the engineer? And I said, sure. So we stopped by and met him. And then like a week later, I finally got the nerve to stop by and knock on the door again and say, hey, do you need an assistant for anything? I'm brand new in town. And yeah, he took me, I don't know if you can say he took me under his wing, but he basically exploited my free labor. Like, that's the industry.
So how old were you at the time?
I was a late bloomer.
Okay.
I was like 30, 31.
All right. And did you have any money saved up? Did you have a regular job?
So when I was in Florida, I had a band called Harvest, and I was in the process of building a recording studio, and I had a publishing company with my mom, a book publishing company, and I had a live-in girlfriend. We had 4 dogs, and then I turned 30, and it just hit me, you know. I was like, I can't stay in this little town forever. So found homes for the dogs, quit the publishing company, shut down the studio, quit my band, got in my car. I had $900 to my name, and just hit the road. I wanted to be the next John Mayer, you know. I was, or not John Mayer, but more like, uh, you know, Tonic or some of those '90s bands. So then, yeah, Doug let me start working at Scott Weiland was out on tour with STPs on that last tour I think they were doing, and Doug took me in and let me, you know, wrap cables, make coffee, take out the trash for local bands that he was producing. Scott got back in town, and yeah, we met and hit it off. I was sober at the time. I was 20 years sober,
Mm-hmm.
and Scott needed what they call a sober coach.
Mm-hmm.
They get paid a lot of money to not do anything. So a sober coach is basically someone that gets hired for 6 grand a week, 8 grand a week to go out on tour with a rock star and try to talk him out of doing drugs. Obviously, you can't put your hands on them. You can't physically stop them from doing it. All you can do is like hang out with them and try to get them to not do drugs. That's your job. And if they do it, it's not your responsibility. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty wild job. So I did that. When Scott got back in town, I was sober and he needed a sober coach. So I started doing that. More like a personal assistant, but also positive influence, as you
Yeah.
could say, you know.
And so you were 20 years sober at the age of like 30s?
Yeah. So I got put into rehab in St. Pete, Florida when I was 16. It was mostly behavioral things.
All right.
I didn't actually do a lot of drugs, but I was just a rotten kid. It was a 1.5-year program, but I was in it for 9 months.
Okay.
But I was only like away for 2 months, and then I would still go every day for like 6 hours, 8 hours a day, and then whatever.
When you're in rehab, did you get a chance to really understand yourself and understand?
Yeah, I learned a lot. I mean, I was young, and um, you know, I was tricked into going. I was told I was going to see a counselor, and then some big giant dude stood in front of a door and said, "You're not going anywhere for a 1.5 years," and scared the shit out of me. But I made it through 9 months of the program, and then I
Mhm.
told my parents I'm leaving, or asked them if I could leave, and I stayed sober for 20 years.
All right.
Yeah, I just immediately started going to meetings, ditched all my old friends, and didn't go back to any of the places. Because what, you know, you got to change the people, places, and things that you had, but you know, when you were using. Because if you don't, you're gonna go. If you go back to those people, places, and things, you're gonna use. You know, I never identified, and I still don't identify as a musician
Mm-hmm.
because a musician is someone that really I have a lot of respect for musicians. They dedicate their life to this craft, you know, to this instrument. And I never had the talent to play a guitar solo or sing like Chris Cornell. What I did have a knack for was writing songs and stuff. So and producing. Later on, I figured out what a record producer was and realized that that's what I do. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
want to do. Um, so I play all the instruments, you know, enough to write songs on and stuff, you know. And then when I'm ready to track them, I get real musicians to come in. And
So when you were moving to LA, was your plan on becoming a solo artist, becoming a producer? Just I need to get to
when
LA.
I went to LA wanting to be the next John Mayer. It was when Room for Squares was blowing up really big,
Mm-hmm.
and I was obsessed with that album. I wanted to come here and get signed as an artist. And then I spent about 10 minutes in the studio with Scott Weiland and said, I'm not ready.
Why was that?
Because he's fucking amazing.
Okay.
Incredible. And I
And
was
that,
like, I'm not at that level.
all
So I'm
right.
going to stay on this side of the glass and let the people with the real talent be on that side of the glass, you know?
So when you moved to LA, you kind of had some intentions of being a solo artist, and that rapidly shifted. Were you more interested in being an engineer, being a producer, or you didn't know at the time?
I think producing is more my speed just because I like, I'm also a songwriter. So I
Mm-hmm.
like the overall production of things. Engineering is fine now. I do it myself because I've been doing it enough years to where I'm fast at it. And all this stuff is not as intimidating as it used to be. I used to just produce and then hire an engineer,
Yeah.
but um, now I produce and engineer myself. Mixing is my least favorite part.
Really?
Oh, it's horrible. I always say making a record is like the party, and then mixing is like cleaning up the next day.
Oh wow.
because it really is like, you have five guys in a room like this and you're creating and you're coming up with parts and you're having so much fun. And then everyone leaves and you sit in the room by yourself and you tweak tiny, tiny, 1 decibel up on the,
Yeah.
oh, it's tedious and you're not making music.
So as a producer, are you the kind of person that thinks your job is to capture a moment and portray that moment as honestly as possible versus some people think they are a sonic painter?
So it depends on the project. If I'm producing a solo artist, let's say, that has some songs on acoustic guitar or whatever, and they want a full band behind
Hmm.
them, then it's my job to put the right musicians on that project. It's like casting for a movie. If you get the wrong players, it's going to be a nightmare. If you get the right players, they're going to automatically play what's right for the song, and your life is 100 times easier. So yeah, is putting together the band and then putting together the arrangements of the songs and what's the sound. There's no sound, so you have to create the sound for the artist. Whereas when you're recording a band, they have a sound. There's already a band. In that instance, my job is to just put a microphone in front of it, not fuck it up.
You're not trying to craft their vision, you're trying to just capture it.
Well, I'm trying to make their vision come to reality because usually don't know how to work all this stuff. I try to interpret what they want.
And with the engineering things, you learn that just the hard way, right? You learned it just by fucking things up and
Finding out.
yeah.
Fucking up and finding out.
Do you think like nowadays a producer needs to know the ins and outs of engineering? Can someone just get into the business without knowing that?
There's two paths basically to what I do. There's the big studio thing, which is what I tried to do. You work for very, very little money, minimum wage usually as a runner in a big studio, and for like a year and a half, and then they'll move you up to assistant engineer for like another year and a half, and you'll still make shitty money. And then maybe 3 years later, they might throw you a bone, or if an engineer gets sick, to actually engineer a project. The downside is you don't get to really live life. You're just in the studio. And then the other path is to buy the equipment and set it up at your house, do it yourself. And then maybe you do a band that blows up big, and then you can not ever work at a studio as an employee, but then you'll be independent. You'll be able to produce bands for a living. That's kind of the route I took. When I first moved to LA, I'll never forget. I used to drive around with my resume and slide them under the doors of the studios or try to give them to somebody at the studio. There was one studio in particular that I really wanted to work at, and they wouldn't even let me in the gate or take my resume or anything. Fast forward, it was only like a year or two later. This band that I work with called Velvet Revolver formed, and then we mixed our record there. But it was just the sweetest feeling ever when I went back to that studio and I said, I'm here with Velvet Revolver, and the fucking gate just opened, and I
Yeah.
was like, hi, and they were like, hi, Mr. Guarino, and so it was a very different thing from not letting me.
How long were you working with Doug or being his intern or his runner until you started making money?
Oh, Doug never paid me. The only way I got paid was leaving the studio and going into other studios and
Hmm.
getting paid. What was the question?
How, so I was saying, like, how long before you were doing this thankless grind, climb up the ladder, be
Right.
an intern, be a runner, until you started making some money?
It took a while. Yeah. I mean, 2 years in LA, but a lot of years in Florida.
Like, were you thinking I need to do anything I can to get my foot in the door?
Yeah. Yeah. I was pretty aggressive with, to wake up early in the morning and make the most of the day right away and network. It's all about networking. It's all about people. I mean, you can talk about business, you can talk about music, you can talk about success, whatever. At the end of the day, it boils down to like looking someone in the eye and shaking their hand. All the biggest deals in the world happen with people, right? So it's just people. 100% of every job of your career will be from people.
On that note, do you think your career would have turned out drastically different had social media been around when you were really trying to make your way up the ranks?
I mean, I'm glad that all the stupid shit I did as a teenager weren't public, that's for sure. I mean, God, the kids these days have it rough, man. One wrong move and you're done. Yeah, I'm sure it would have been different. Things move a lot faster now.
If you make a contact with somebody online
Mhm.
versus in person,
Yeah.
do you think those register the same? Do you think they have the same impact?
No,
Or
of course not. No. But I mean, if they're serious, then you'll pretty quickly. At least for me, I don't like to waste time.
uh-huh.
If someone's interested in working together, we'll go grab a meal.
Okay. So but for you it's still very much like relationships and people centered.
Yeah. For
And
sure, yeah, 100%.
if a band messages you, or if you're thinking about working with a band,
Uh-huh.
what's the first thing you listen to? Do you listen to their music or do
Yeah.
you look at their audience?
No, you gotta dig the music. I'm at a point now where I'm lucky enough where I don't have to do everything, but I've produced some terrible bands earlier in my career,
Hmm.
and I didn't like the music, but it's kind of like building a house. I don't have to love every house I build. I just got to swing my hammer and go home. When you're starting out early in your career, you always say yes as much as possible and try to get the most experience.
So if you hear a band that is just knocks your socks off, but they have like 20 followers on Instagram, is that a red flag for you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
They say the music business is 90% business, 10% music.
The music business is 100% business. It's
Ah,
business. It's the music business.
I see a lot of bands out there that sound great
Hmm.
and they have no marketing presence. They post irregularly on social media, but almost every band as we're coming up now is expected to be like their own label. They're expected
Yeah.
to have their own promo, their own brand identity,
Yeah.
their own videographer, photographer.
Yeah, that's the part that sucks for bands, is that not every band has someone in their band that's good at that stuff or interested in fucking doing it. Like, you didn't sign up for that. You're just trying to be a musician. I don't hold it against any artist if they don't have a lot of followers. If I was judging them as online marketers and they didn't have
Hmm.
a lot of followers, then yeah, but I'm not judging them as musicians, and
Okay.
that's not what that is.
So with your work, are you basically just, oh, if somebody finds me and they want to pay me, I do it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, you can't really approach a band and say you should pay me to produce your record. That's
Hmm.
just a weird thing to do. So it's a weird thing about producing, is that you can't offer your services. I mean, you can, but it would be weird. It would be awkward. You're better off just saying, just going out and just meeting people, saying and making people aware of you and your work, and then if they want to hire you, they'll hire you. I do have a label. I have a label called Starlight Records. Once in a while, I'll find a band that has no money, but they have a ton of talent. I'll bring them in the studio and record them, put them on my label.
Has that bore any fruit? Have you?
Nothing's broken big yet, but
Okay.
I'm not really expecting to. The artists that I signed to my label are not the kind of music that's in the top 40 or anything right now.
Okay.
It's mostly rock stuff.
And so speaking of rock, seems like you are living both in LA and Nashville right now. What's your intention for the next coming years? And do you think that Nashville has a rock scene where you can work here in that
Yeah, I
capacity?
think so. Yeah. Nashville's been good to me. I've had good luck. And yeah, I'm going to stick around for a while. I think it's got a good rock scene. LA doesn't have a great rock scene anymore. I mean, they have the Sunset Strip. That's about it.
Hmm.
And that's mostly like hair metal bands that look like they're still stuck in the 80s. And I want to get down to like more Tom Petty vibes. And that's why I came to Nashville.
So what's your intention with being in Nashville? What are you looking to do?
Just keep making records.
Okay.
Yeah, producing killer bands. And eventually I'd like to have a good roster on my label. I've got, I think, 10 artists on Spotify right now
Uh-huh.
on my label, I think. So eventually I'd like to do a joint venture with a major label.
So people finding you to work with you,
Hmm.
it's just word, is it just word of mouth?
All of my work comes from word of mouth, Instagram, and Facebook.
Really? Okay.
I mean, where else
And
do you find work? I don't advertise like record producer or like, any of that thing.
and do you ever feel pressure to like keep on putting stuff up on Facebook or Instagram, anything like
Yeah, of
that?
course. Yeah, you want to be able to, if you're going to find work, you got to be out there. You got to do it. It's part of reality these days. Unless you're an A-list producer,
Mm.
people know who they are and they just say, "Hey, let's get Rick Rubin to produce our, or whoever to produce our record because they're a famous record producer." Then yeah, you don't even have to have social media. You can
Okay.
just, and you don't have to live any. You can live in Wyoming. If someone wants you, they'll call you and you fly to them and make the record. But when you're not an A-list producer, then yeah, you got to still post on social media and get out there and hustle and network.
Is that something you enjoy, or is that kind of just comes with the territory for
The
you?
social media part.
The social media and the networking and the hustle.
I mean, I'm a very social person. I like people. I like
Mm.
personalities. I'm attracted to weirdos and artists and that kind of thing.
So when you go out in Nashville,
Uh-huh.
where do you go? Where do you check out for new talent?
I think the venue I've been to the most is the Underdog.
Yeah.
It's just a cool down home place, and there's just seems to be a lot of music that I like going on there. Um, the OG Basement is right around the corner from my house in Berry Hill, or Basement East. Cobra's cool because that's rock. There's the East Room, which is also kind of a rock room, and then there's one downtown that I haven't been to yet, a rock club. I don't remember what it's called. Bowie's, I think.
Bowie's is actually closed now.
It's closed? Ah,
Yeah.
I missed it.
Yeah, so that's part of like the whole Broadway scene, which is
Yeah, that's not my scene, but
okay. So any reason why? Just because it's
I like original music.
okay.
I like to go see original music. Um, Cover bands are great if you want to go out once in a while and have fun. And just for my own enjoyment, I'd rather see original music.
When you're working with a musician or a group, what do you look for?
I mean, first of all, they have to be amazing.
All right.
And to be amazing in Nashville is a lot. I think Nashville has the best musicians in the world and the most musicians in the world, I think.
Yeah.
LA doesn't have, I mean, LA's got great musicians, sure. I think the best musicians in LA are probably the church cats in the R&B scene.
Yeah.
That's where the good musicians are. Um, there's like there's a lot of bands on the east side of LA and like in the hipster parts of town.
Like Silver Lake.
Yeah, but most of them aren't good musicians. They make cool, interesting music, but you don't
Y-
have to be a good musician to do that.
Yeah,
So
I
that's what
think
yeah. If you're asking me about hiring a session cat, or you're asking me about artists that I would sign to my label, those are two totally different things.
so. Why is that?
Well, if I'm finding an artist to sign to my label or a band, I just want them to be a cool band
Hmm.
and have a unique sound, like when you listen to a band and you go, "Oh, that's that band," even if you've never heard the song before, because they have that much of a signature sound, and they're good as a band, as a unit, and fun to watch and great songs. That's what I look for my label.
Hmm.
But just to hire like a session musician to come and play on somebody's song, I don't need any of that. I just need you to be a good musician and be easy to work with.
Yeah, so you're almost looking at the original artist. You're looking for something unique and
Yeah,
different.
exactly.
Versus a session musician, you're looking for somebody who is good at execution.
Yeah, just somebody that can hear a piece of music, hear a song, and play a part right for the song.
So when you're looking for session musicians, then
Mhm.
how do you make those connections?
It's usually through other session musicians. In Nashville, you'll have a great band with a great sound, like a PJ Ferguson, where
Hmm.
everyone in his band is a session musician,
Hmm.
but they're also a band, and
Yeah,
they're incredible
which is
musicians.
rare.
It's rare. It's not that rare in Nashville. I think a lot of solo artists will have a band behind them that's a killer band.
Hmm.
And they're the Tennessee Strange.
Yeah,
They're their own thing. It's like Tom Petty and the
yeah.
Heartbreakers and whatever. So yeah, that's what I love about Nashville. Is like it's mostly good musicians.
I have a lot of people come to me and say, "Hey, Aaron, I want to come to Nashville and I want to be a session player."
Hmm.
And they ask me, "How do I go about doing that?"
It's networking again. It's not sitting at home on your couch at night. Every night you spend on your couch is wasted. You're just wasting time. I don't care how hard you work during the day or what you do during the day, but it's at night is where you're going to get your
Hmm.
work. You got to be out seeing shows, or if there's some kind of panel or conference or whatever, once in a while, do all that shit. But mostly it's about being at a local venue and doing shows. That's where you're going to meet. That's where everybody is. So the music scene in Nashville is at little dive bars,
So do you think you can
or
just
for original music.
show up at a recording studio with a resume or saying, "Hey, I want to be a runner," or do you think
No, probably not. I think there's a long list of people trying to do that.
that's an antiquated way of doing business or getting hired
Yeah,
now?
but there's some old timers in Nashville that would probably appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, there's some traditionalists, but yeah, unfortunately, Nashville is in the same way that any industry is, or any city is. It caters to people that have certain opportunities. When you come from a successful family, or you have money, you tend to be associated with people that are doing great things or are in positions of power.
I have another musician I work with saying he thinks that musician or music is going towards it's a luxury and it's going to be for trust fund babies in the future. It costs so much and there is just the barrier to entry for making a living as a musician or getting into the door as an
Uh,
original artist.
I think the opposite. I think the barrier of entry has never been lower.
Mm.
Like anyone, because you used to need a place like this to record. You had to go spend thousands of dollars and go to a place And now you just do it on your laptop.
I mean, we all carry
Do
computers
it
around
on
in our
your
pocket.
yeah, and there's apps you can use on your phone, on your iPad, on your laptop. I mean, making music has never been cheaper or easier.
The music industry was kind of established over, for lack of better terms, over a century. With the advent of physical media, because that was kind of a novelty with records. Like, music was kind of ephemeral. It was like, okay, I play it and then it's in the air and then it's
Yeah,
gone.
before records, it's wild, right?
Yeah,
Like
and
that's a thing that happened that was never going to happen again.
yeah, and then records came along, but then like we built this whole system of like that's when highways came along,
Yeah.
mass transit, record labels, and like distributions. And then late 90s, early 2000s, internet just became ubiquitous, and that whole digital revolution, it shattered like what was built over a century. It shattered that in like a few years.
Yeah.
So now I view it as like basically think about the music industry as this castle, this kingdom. Someone threw a Molotov cocktail called the internet and just blew it up, right? And now it's all in these little pieces scattered all about. And I think the lords of that kingdom are eventually going to gather it up. As you can see, like with Spotify, they locked down the streaming thing. And we used to think Napster was bad because artists weren't getting any money. Well, now we're still paying, but the artists still aren't getting any money.
Right.
But on the other hand, we also see that like home recording, you also can, social media is free advertising. Every musician has to be their own record label though.
Right.
And so you have a lot more responsibility. The middleman is just kind of cut out temporarily, for lack of better terms.
Yeah.
But you just have to do a lot of it yourself. And I still think the same thing applies, though, that a lot of people, especially musicians, they're like, I'm good at playing music. I love it. How do I make this my living? And what piece of advice would you give to a musician, somebody who's interested in the music business, and they're just want to pack up and go to New York, LA, Nashville? What's the one piece of advice you would give them?
Don't have a plan B, because if you have a plan B, you're going to use it and you're going to give up because it's going to get fucking hard.
Yeah.
So just don't have a plan B.
Did you ever have a plan B?
Nope. It was this or nothing. It was this or live under a bridge. I'm fucking stubborn. That's what you have to be. You have to do that. Anything in the entertainment industry, it's a sacrifice, you know.
Did you ever have a moment where you were close to like, I can't do this anymore?
Oh, yeah. A lot.
Like,
a lot.
What was the moments, probably one of like the roughest moments for you when you wanted to give up on the music business?
Probably right before I left LA, or right before I moved to Nashville. Yeah.
All right.
Because, well, we were in a pandemic, and so no one was really making records. Couldn't be in the same room. When coronavirus came out, the music industry pretty much came to a screeching halt like everything else. And then when it kind of slowly started to start back up, I wasn't feeling it. I was having trouble finding work because my genre of music isn't really in LA. You know, the metal is fine and the R&B is cool, and I like really good musicians. You know, so it just depends. And then just more and more people were telling me about Nashville and how great it is. So I came out, I made the move. But yeah, that was a tough time. Yeah.
Do you think that the move rejuvenated you because you had to
Yeah.
almost start over again and like re-examine your patterns?
Absolutely. I had to completely start over from scratch in a new city where I knew not a single person.
How did you start over again? What did you do? What steps did you take?
Oh, how did I start over?
Yeah, like how did you get yourself and how did you find a place to record? How did
Oh,
you?
yeah. Facebook, Instagram, and local bars.
So you were going out, networking, shaking hands.
Yeah. I haven't gotten any work from going out in Nashville. So far, it's been all on Facebook. But I've met the coolest people and I've seen the best music.
Nashville is a unique place. It has a lot of different pockets in it if you find them. I've been here for a few years and it's very different than what I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think that this city, it can be what you make of it. Like you can find something for yourself, and if it's not there, you can build it.
Yeah.
Nashville has that flexibility right now. And the thing that's different about Nashville than New York and LA, New York and LA have a bunch of different industries. Nashville is music city.
That's what I always tell people. With LA, I was there for 20 years and I got to see all the different, you know, you have actors and crew members and models and comedians and all this stuff. And Nashville's just music city.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I came here. Nashville was, yeah, should have done it a long time ago.
What's one thing that you see like younger musicians or up and coming musicians do that you're like, oh, you need to stop doing that? Or somebody comes into the studio and you're like,
Oh
no.
my God. Okay. I have the biggest pet peeve. Stems are not tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Tracks are not stems.
Mm-hmm.
Tracks are individual kick drum in, kick drum out, snare drum top, snare drum bottom. Those are tracks. Those are not stems.
Okay.
Stems are stereo mixes of things. So like all the drums together in a stereo mix, that's a stem. So you have drum stems, bass stems, guitar stems, keyboard, whatever. People refer to tracks as stems, and it's very annoying.
So yeah, that's almost. I mean, that's some people will call that minutia. I wouldn't, but some people are like, oh, it's
It's two different
semantics.
things. What do you want? Do you want the tracks or do you want the stems?
Yeah, it's
What am I
like
sending you? You gotta, yeah.
it's
Just like kids these days say, what do they say? What was it? Oh, on accident.
okay
It happened on accident.
by accident.
Right.
Okay, so
Kids these days, get off my lawn.
so is there any aside from misnomers regarding musical nomenclature? What is there like any like a behavior, a pattern, a trend that you think is maybe not in the best interest of musicians that you see happen frequently?
Drugs.
Okay. Why do you think it's so prevalent in like with musicians? Do you have any insight that you think maybe somebody else
I think it's just because musicians are in the public eye. It's not any more prevalent with musicians than it is
mm-hmm,
with cubicle workers. Your average, mechanic or everyday Joe.
mm-hmm.
I think what you're talking about is like musicians kind of get a pass,
Yeah.
and they're fine with it being public. Whereas if you have a corporate job, it's like hush hush. But that's why it seems like it's more common with musicians, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's actually not.
Have you noticed anything about people becoming more open to talking about these experiences or being vulnerable about them?
I think
Um,
society in general with younger people is definitely way better than it was when I was coming up. Or definitely more open. They're not putting on airs as much or facades. They're just like being honest and showing warts and all with
yeah.
a lot of things, and I love that. I love that.
Thoughts on therapy? Because I notice a lot of musicians are starting to talk about doing that
I
now.
think everybody should be in therapy,
Okay. What
whether you need it or not, whether
was?
you think you need it or not, because we all need someone to talk to
Hmm.
that may have some insight that someone that's not trained doesn't have. That's, that being said, I'm not in therapy.
All right.
But it's very, I think, okay, look, there's two ways to look at it. I've been in rehab, I've been in therapy, I've been in marriage counseling when I was married. At the end of the day, none of it really does anything. But it's also like the best thing you'll ever do. Because at the same time, like you can talk to your buddies and you can talk to your girlfriends, whatever, but you got to be able to have someone to talk to that knows what the fuck they're talking about. And it's like when my car's broken, I go to a mechanic. And,
Exactly.
my brain is broken, so I should probably be talking to somebody more regularly. But
So,
yeah, I think therapy's good.
do you do any general maintenance in that way?
I go to the gym
Okay.
and I do transcendental meditation.
How long have you been doing transcendental meditation?
I started doing it the month I moved to Nashville, so January of 23.
And are you regular? Are you consistent with that?
Yeah, every day.
How do you feel about that?
I love it. It's
Okay.
amazing.
What about it do you love?
Um, Everything, really. I mean, it takes the stress away
Mm-hmm.
um, until it comes back. Something happens. Um, but yeah, I do it 10 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Like clockwork every day.
You have to, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And it's 20 minutes. And there's an app on my phone and it's super easy. Couldn't be any easier. They give you a word,
Mm-hmm.
like a phrase, like a mantra,
Yeah.
and you're not supposed to tell anybody. Everyone's is different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many there are. I think there was only like 13 of them, but I don't know. But yeah, you just say that word over and over.
For 20 minutes. And you feel that, and that cleanses the pipe somehow for you?
It really does, yeah. It
Okay.
really does. It's pretty wild
Yeah, I've,
because eventually you're not hearing the word anymore. You're just in a transcendental state. It's very, very different from what like a lot of people I've heard talk about meditation, where you have to like clear your mind and not think of anything. You can't not think of something. Your brain is your brain. As long as you're awake, you're going to be thinking.
yeah.
So that's why they give you this mantra to repeat.
Mm.
So then you can just think about that. Not think about.
All right, so we're just gonna wrap up big plans for the future in Nashville. Like, what's on the map for you in the coming year?
In the coming year is to work with some incredible A-list musicians and win a Grammy.
Okay. Have you won a Grammy before?
I have not won a Grammy. I have a platinum album, but I don't have my
Okay.
Grammy yet.
What album is that?
It's Velvet Revolver Contraband.
So were you engineer,
I was
producer?
assistant engineer. I set
Okay.
up the microphone.
So
I
do you
got a
get
plaque
like,
on my wall for that.
do you ever get points? Do you ever get publishing on any of the stuff you're doing?
Oh yeah, always. Yeah, I have a deal memo with everybody I produce.
Okay, so like you're getting that mailbox money.
Yep.
Okay, and is that like a big part of like, is that important for a producer to know how to?
Oh yeah, that's your bread and butter. Yeah, I mean, you might get paid. You'll get paid production fee for the session,
Uh-huh.
but without that mailbox money, yeah.
So
That's why engineering doesn't appeal as much to me, or
okay,
mixing, because engineering is just there's no points.
what exactly do you do? Like say, hey, I need this many points, or
Well, so there's the old school and the new school, right? So like
mm-hmm,
the old school producers, which is the world I'm sort of coming out of, is like you get 3 to 5 points on a
mm-hmm.
record. You get your production fee. It's going to be anywhere from nothing or pizza and beer up to Rick Rubin gets 350 grand and 10 points, but you
Yeah,
might get 30 grand and 3 points.
okay.
And that point, 1 point is equal to 1% of the retail sales of the. I'm talking about physical media now. So
Yeah.
like a CD.
Yeah, physical media, it's
Yeah.
dead.
So every album that sells at the store, you get, usually for me, I only ask for 3 points
Mm-hmm.
because I try not to exploit musicians. I try to be pro musician.
Yeah.
So like, but most guys in my shoes are getting between 3 to 5 points, 3, 4, 5 points. There's been albums where I've taken 5 points. Sometimes where they can't pay me my full rate, so I'll
Okay.
exchange for higher points on the back end.
Do you get any money from like publishing, from like streaming, and
I only get money on publishing if I work on the songs, co-write the songs. If I'm just getting hired as a producer and I'm not writing any of the songs, then there's no publishing. But so this is what I was saying about the old school and the new school. On the new school, like these younger cats, they realize that producer points are basically monkey points. You're not going to see any money from that because no one's buying CDs or
yeah,
vinyl is good, but
it's a niche.
yeah. So so yeah, you can get 5 points, 10 points of the publishing as a producer, even though you didn't write any of the music with up and coming artists. That's how they're doing it.
So have you explored doing that at all?
I can't take publishing from a band that I didn't write the songs. It's just weird to me. But if I produced a bunch of young guys that are totally fine with it, and maybe they don't have the money to pay me up front or something, we can work something like that out on the back end. But I
Yeah.
haven't done it yet.
Yeah, like I'm like
It's
literally trying to think. So like Bob Rock on Metallica, like that Black album.
well, back then it was all CDs and cassettes. He
Yeah.
was getting probably 5% of every retail sale.
But sometimes like I guess the point I was going at is that sometimes a producer puts their fingerprint on an album so much that it's like they are the sound is part of the band. The sound is like a member, and it wouldn't be that band or that sound without that person. Like with George Martin as well. Like to somebody to help arrange or to somebody to
Right.
to really.
Yeah, if that's what kind of there's producers that have a sound,
Mhm.
and then there's more transparent people. My job, if you have a killer band with a killer sound, my job is to not fuck it up. Is to just put a microphone in front of it and just capture it as it is and not fuck with it.
You're basically saying like, okay, you are. If it's a documentary, you are somebody that just wants to be a fly on the wall, versus some producers are like Werner Herzog, who wants to interject their personality into it and shake things up and see what happens.
I'm less Werner Herzog and more Ken Burns. But yeah, if a band, it depends on the situation. Some bands don't really know what they want. The influence I can have on a band is less of the sound and more of the performance. My job is to be a psychologist, psychiatrist, keep everyone in the same room and not killing each other, and trying to get people on time, budgeting, scheduling, and the performances and the parts. So they come in with a song, and I might suggest a bass line for the bridge, or a guitar line for the intro, whatever that might enhance the music a little bit.
Do you ever feel like you have to be like referee?
Oh
Or
yeah,
like,
for sure. Of course. Yeah, of course.
and so is that a skill that you've intentionally developed?
So my history of being in rehab for 9 months and being in AA for 20 years is I feel like everything that I've been through in life kind of culminated into me being a producer, because that everything I learned about people skills and the brain and
Hmm.
talking about emotions and all that stuff in rehab or whatever has really helped me a lot in the studio.
I mean, even a big part of AA is about community. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because so much of what you mention, without saying anything about AA or anything related to that, is about community, about
Mhm.
going out,
Yeah,
rubbing elbows with people,
yeah,
and not eating lunch alone. One thing I've just kind of noticed with musicians is a lot of people expect it all to happen online without doing that work of going out.
yeah. Like I said, you can meet 100 people in 5 minutes on Instagram. You know what I mean, on Facebook, and then when you go out, it's when you go out in the world, it's less quantity, more quality. Because
Yeah,
you're
and
looking someone in the eye and shaking their hand, and online it's less quality and more quantity.
I've always felt that 1 minute of interaction in human, like in person, is like worth like 5 or 10 online.
Yeah, yeah,
It just pays so much greater dividends, and
yeah.
you need to have so many interactions with somebody online to even make an impression.
Hmm.
But in person, like I can tell so much more about a person from a vibe I get with just 5 seconds of talking
Oh
to
yeah,
them.
for sure.
Um, and then online, it's totally different. Like some people are really great at typing, and then I see them and they have no personality.
Yeah,
And a
yeah,
lot of times, people are like they are terrible at texting,
yeah.
and but they are so great in person.
Yeah, oh,
They
yeah,
have
for sure.
it's
Yeah,
very interesting.
yeah, it really is.
Um, so where can musicians find you if they want to work with you?
RoccoMusic.com,
Okay.
my website, or Instagram is Rocco Music. On my website is all my stuff is
Yeah.
linked.
One of my biggest takeaways from this conversation, no one is coming to discover you. It's about you showing up, you building relationships, you putting in the work, you falling down, you picking yourself back up over and over and over again. And this brings up a really interesting point. Do you believe in the no plan B approach? Are you the type of person that works better without a safety net? Or do you feel like you should have that financial career safety net? Really think about it, and I want to hear about your take in the comments. Or what do you think about Nashville and rock? Do you think the rock scene here is up and coming? Do you think this is the next hot spot for original music? Again, please share your opinions here. And speaking of sharing, I wanted to share a personal note about this interview and the footage surrounding it. I originally had 3 camera angles set up for this interview, as it's part of a larger documentary on the making of an album that I'm super excited about releasing. That was until I lost 5 terabytes of data in a hard drive crash. Oh, God. Currently, I'm in the process of trying to recover those files, and not everything may be saved. And you know what? Sometimes shit happens. It's a tough lesson. But it's also making me realize as this channel grows, so does the work behind the scenes, and so does the help I need. And that help I need, archiving and cataloging footage, shooting and editing, and help with equipment, including maintaining multiple hard drives. Those are all areas and more that I need help in. And my supporter, viewer donations have made a significant dent, and I thank you all so much for that. But in order to take this channel to the next level, I'm eventually going to need business partners. So if you'd like to sponsor this channel, or sponsor a video, even commission a video, or if you're interested in advertising partnerships, please shoot me an email at aaronaptermusic@gmail.com. And this is all part of my growing pains. I was originally wanting to have this video out a day before, but again, technical difficulties and real life got in the way. And frankly, sometimes I have to prioritize other things or compromise and bend a little bit so I don't break, as I'm doing so much right now. I'm wildly fulfilled and also wildly exhausted, if that makes sense. And this is why I'd really love to have a corporate sponsor on this channel. That is so I can continue to create great content and step up both the quality and quantity of it in the future. So please keep that in mind, folks. If you know of anything, if you have any ideas, shoot them my way. And as always, if you got something valuable from this conversation, please comment, subscribe, share it with another musician or another creative you might think that this is useful for. And as always, thank you for watching. Your viewership, your support means the world to me. Please be kind to other people. Please be kind to yourself, and I'll see you on the next video.